Good afternoon, and very good afternoon. Welcome to the show. Welcome to VUEGRAPHY. Today's topic is not so difficult, but yet it is difficult at the same time. And the question is which one we have to go for photography or when we have to go to shoot anything or choose camera. What exactly kind of a camera do we need? Do we need full frame or do we need crop sensor? It is as simple as that, but it's just one simple question. If I want to buy a camera, so what kind of camera should I go with? Should I choose full frame or should I choose crop sensor? Well, the answer it depends totally on what type of shoot that I have to do, what kind of things which I love to capture. There are several advantages which full frame is having, and there are few advantages which crop sensors are having over the full frame. The most obvious difference between the full frame now, as we are talking about in 2022, now when it comes to the performance, the image quality, the full frame and crop sensor, there is no difference when it comes to image quality. So you can go with full frame, you can go with crop sensor easily. That's not an issue. So where exactly the issue is? The issue, if you are really start going much more deeper, where exactly the issue is? The issue is the glass. Simple. The only thing which makes you choose full frame over crop sensor is how much glasses the full frame is offering over the crop sensor. Long telephoto lens, wide angle lens, tilt shift lens, fisheye lens, primes, and all that. Now, there is a thing that, of course, you can choose the full frame lenses over the crop body, but that comes that 1.5 or 1.6 times multiplication factor. So for the normal usage, you can use any full frame lens over the crop body and you can get away with it. Yeah, you will lose shallow depth of field, blah blah blah, but that's not an issue. We are not talking about that. Yeah, for portraiture, many people consider that we need full frame because we need shallow depth of field or we need subject separation. But that's one case. That's the portraiture. What about the landscape? For landscape, because the thing is, the more bigger the sensor is, the more better the separation is at the same given focal length or any given focal length. Yeah, and even at any given aperture, if we try to keep the frame size same. So the bigger the sensor, the better the separation. If we are shooting from the same distance, the same subject, and we are not changing our position, we want to keep the frame same, and we want to use the same lens over the full frame or the crop body, and at the same given aperture, same focal length, same distance, then of course we will be losing the subject separation over the crop sensor. So that's the portraiture. What about the landscape? Well, for the landscape, the problem comes with the crop sensor is they don't have much lenses for the landscape. They really don't. You can get, when it comes to full frame has all the lenses that you need. All the lenses. From 11 mm ultra wide all the way up to 1200 mm. You have everything. So where exactly we got stuck? Why we have to choose full frame over the crop sensor? Like I said, it depends what you are shooting. There are scenarios where people prefer to go with crop sensor because the crop sensor will usually provide more pixels per square unit area, like for photojournalism, especially landscape, sports, action, wildlife, all those things. That's where now the National Geographic photographers they prefer to go with crop sensor. They use the full frame high end glass like 600 millimeter over the crop sensor. Like for example, the 600 f4 over the Nikon D500. D500 is crop sensor from Nikon. Shoot 10 frames per second. Awesome camera, great dynamic range, and 10 frames per second edge to edge for autofocus points. Best for low light. I'm gonna put some images of D500 which I took for the action, sports, wildlife, or bird photography on the screen, so you can get an idea what exactly I'm talking. But that's one scenario. For the landscape, there is no glasses. Like I said, it all comes down to glasses. It depends what exactly you're shooting, which ultimately leads to what type of glass that you want to choose. There is one company called Fujifilm, which literally pushing the boundaries when it comes to optical engineering. Because the thing is, when it comes to crop sensor, the making of ultra wide lenses are very difficult, and not many companies are making. Fujifilm make the 18 to 16 f2.8. That's 12 to 24 2.8 full frame equivalent. They have 16 to 52.8 and then 50 to 152.8. So they have their holy trinity of lenses for their crop sensor, but their 18 to 60 2.8 is, which is equivalent to 12 to 24 full frame, is very expensive lens. It's more than $2,000. Literally, as I'm making it's really very expensive lens. Well, Fujifilm tried it and they made the lens, but they are only one company. There is another company which are making ultra wide lenses for the crop sensor, which is 10 to 24 from Tamron. I believe it's 2.8. 10 to 24, 2.8 from Tamron is a new lens, and it's really great. That lens is really sharp. See, that ultimately you will be forced to switch to full frame, even though if you are having your very first camera crop sensor, you will be forced to move to full frame because the companies like Canon and Nikon, they don't want you to spend your time mostly on crop sensor because there is no much type of lenses. For portraiture, there is no lenses for crop sensor. There is no. Of course, you can use full frame lenses over the crop body, but again, that multiplication factor kicks in and you will be losing subject separation. So you will be ultimately forced to move to full frame. So that's portraiture and architecture. Portraiture and landscape. For the landscape, like I said, there is no lenses. And for subject separation, there is also no lenses. Again, Fujifilm made one lens 56mm f1.2 for the portraiture, which ultimately gives you 85mm 1.8 full frame equivalent of subject separation. So Fujifilm really trying their best because Fujifilm doesn't make the full frame. They make crop sensor or they make medium format. That's it. So there is no full frame for Fujifilm. So Fujifilm really giving you and trying their best. They have the best crop sensor lens lineup, all the way from our 8mm to 300, I believe. They also made 200 f2, which is equivalent to 300 2.8 full frame equivalent. The difference between the full frame and the full frame and the crop sensor is just by one step. So in order to get 2.8, you have to make f2 on the crop sensor, yeah. Or if f2 on full frame, so you have to make f1.2 lens on the crop sensor. So Fujifilm is trying to do that. So that's landscape and portrait. What about the architecture? Again, architecture there. The making of the architecture lens, like tilt shift lens, is very difficult. In full frame domain, you have all the lenses, including tilt shift lenses. In fact, Nikon made 24mm, 45mm, and 85mm tilt shift lenses, three categories. Same by Canon at different film focal length. Even I can make 19 millimeter perspective control tilt shift lens, very expensive lens, but best. The optically, it's the Marvel. It's the best optical lens when it comes to perspective control tilt shift lenses. But there is no perspective control tilt shift lenses for crop sensor. That's where you have to switch to full frame because there is no lens. Yep, the advantages of crop sensor over full frame is that 1.5x or 1.6 times multiplication factor. You will get extra reach. I shot a bird yesterday, I believe, 200 to 500, which is full frame lens, over D500, which is crop sensor. So I got that extra reach of 1.5 times with higher pixel density, so which helped me to crop the image as much as I can and still retain the details. So that's the advantage of using a crop sensor over a full frame lenses. You get extra number of pixels per unit area. You get extra reach. So you don't have to completely crop down too much. Alright. So these are the advantages that crop sensors are having over the full frame. And so that's one thing. Now, what about the event photography, like corporate events, like weddings? Okay, that's where the crop sensor is not much good when it because of the low light performance. If we are talking about shooting in this scenario, I'm using a natural light coming from the window and this light from the room. So that's how I'm shooting my video. So that's the normal normal roof light coming from the ceiling, and this is completely window light. In this type of scenario, if I'm shooting wedding, I am totally relying on this natural light, and if it goes down, I am screwed. So I have to use full frame for better image quality. So that's one scenario. But there are people who are using strobe, who are using flash, and they are still making great images. Again, it depends on how you shoot and what you are shooting. You don't need to shoot full frame if you know how to get away or how to get the light for crop sensors. If you are shooting completely relying on the natural light, fine, you have to use full frame for better image quality. So events and weddings, that's where people prefer to go with full frame because of the light. What about sports, action, wildlife? That's where it's 50-50. Now, even right now, people prefer to go with high megapixel full frame cameras because they can easily crop. Like for example, if I have D850, alright, which gives me 45 megapixel, and I have D500, which is 20.9 megapixel, they both are the same when it comes to number of pixels per unit area. Even though this is full frame, but 45 megapixel, and this is crop sensor, 20.9 megapixel, but they have exactly the same number of megapixels per unit area. So if I use the same lens and I'm shooting from the same distance, the same subject, and I use the same lens on both the D850 and D500, I'll get exactly the same result, exactly the same resolution, same detail. So which one should I have to go with? Also, it depends on what exactly do I need. Do I need that extra bit of BSI sensor advantages at the native level? Do really I need the better SNR gain in the end of the day, which gives me a little bit of better image quality through the D850 over D500? Or do I really care about the better autofocus system and edge-to-edge autofocus points, which is available on D500, unlike D850? Again, it depends on me as a photographer. If I really need to go with shooting a sports action wildlife in the broad daylight or any event, I would love to go with D500 because of better autofocus system, or because it has the broader autofocus point spread over the entire viewfinder, which helps me in tracking the birds, the cars, or any action item, unlike D850. So that's the DSLR point. What about the mirrorless? Well, mirrorless, we have Z9, the same pixel density just like D500. So when it comes to mirrorless, there is no camera at the moment from the Nikon or from the Canon. We have R7 now, or R10. R7 is a better crop sensor competitor for shooting sports action wildlife, with much more higher number of pixel per unit area. You can use the RF glass, full frame glass over the R7, and you can get the same result just like D500. Exactly the same. And Nikon is working on the replacement of D500 in the mirrorless form, which will be coming Z90. Z90, I believe it will come with the stack sensor, much more faster readout. So it means that it's built for sports action wildlife, just like D500. So again, what exactly camera do I need? Full frame or crop sensor? Sports action wildlife, I would love to go with D500 because it gives me more room for croppability, more room for more extra reach that I will get, more number of pixels and stuff. For landscape, I would love to go with full frame because there is no ultra wide lens for the full frame. For the crop sensor, sorry, for the crop sensor. Yeah, Fujifilm made 8 to 16, 8 to 16 2.8, but it's very expensive lens. Yeah, Tamron made 10 to 24 2.8. That's another alternative, and it's cheaper. It's way cheaper. I believe it's less than half the price in compared to Fujifilm 8 to 16. So yeah, but besides that, there isn't. Nikon did make 10 to 24 f2. It's a variable aperture, and 12 to 24 f4 for the crop sensor. For the Canon, I'm not aware of any crop sensor area lens for the crop bodies, because they have a multiplication factor of 1.6. So it means that they have to make much more wider angle of lenses in order to compete full frame, which is very difficult to make. Even though Canon really good in making some exceptional lenses, just like 28 to 70 f2 zoom, which they made for their RF mount, but for the crop there isn't. There is no lens. There is no 70 to 200 for crop sensor. Can you believe that? Only Fujifilm made 50 to 150 for their crop sensor 2.8. There is no 2.8 version for the crop of 70 to 200 by Nikon or Canon for their crop sensor. They didn't make. Yep, there is version of 12 to 24. Oh, sorry, 2470 2.8. Nikon do have alternative for you, which is 17 to 55 2.8. I already made a video about that lens. The best crop sensor lens on the planet. Even Fujifilm doesn't have that kind of quality. That lens is made in Japan. It has the image circle projection, which can cover full frame, even though it's designed for crop sensor. But it's the circle of projection, it's so big that it can cover full frame after 28 millimeter onwards all the way up to 55. You can use on full frame without any vignetting at the corner. That lens is so awesome. 70 to 55 2.8 DX lens. It's a crop sensor lens made by Nikon. I don't know anything from Canon about that. There is no 17 to 55 type of a lens even from Sony. There is no 2.8, period. When it comes to prime for the crop sensor, there is only one lens by Nikon, 35 1.8, which is equivalent to 52. 52.5, 1.8, but there is no, because you have to not only the focal length, you have to multiply by 1.5, you have to multiply the aperture value as well in order to get the true equivalent between full frame and crop sensor. So the crop sensor, if you are having 35 1.8 lens, so which gives you 52 millimeter full frame equivalent, so you have to multiply that 1.8 with 1.5 as well. So it's believe is like 3 point something, 3.5 something, I don't know. So it's 52 millimeter, I have 3 point something. It's not even the true f2 equivalent, that 35 millimeter 1.8 lens for the crop sensor. It's not even 50 f2 lens or f2.5, whatever the full frame equivalent turn out to be. So that's the issue. We don't have lenses for the crop sensor. Only Fujifilm is making. Only Fujifilm. Fujifilm has a huge lineup for the primes. They have 16 1.4 prime, awesome lens. They have 23 1.4, which is equivalent to 35 millimeter full frame equivalent. 1.4, that's, they have 35 1.4, which is equivalent to 52 f2. They have the 52 1.2, which is equivalent to 85 1.8. They have, yeah, they have these primes by Fujifilm. No other companies are making such primes. There are, I believe, third-party lenses like Voltrox, which I heard. Maybe I'm not able to recall it properly, but there are some crop sensor lenses from third party, not by Nikon, not by Canon, not by Sony, for their crop sensor lineup. Why? Because they don't want you to stuck with their crop sensor. The crop sensor now are very good for making vlogs. Just like I'm making this video, I'm recording this video by Z30. It's good for that. Small sensor, which gives you broader depth of field, covers many areas, so you can go to very good environmental vlogs. Good for that. And the performance, low light performance, is becoming extremely good because of the better SNR firmware. So again, do I really need crop sensor over full frame? The question again comes down to what I'm shooting, which I said in the beginning, what exactly I'm shooting. If I'm shooting vlog with crop sensor, I don't need prime those 1.4s, because I really need to capture an environment. That's where the kit lenses like 16 to 50, 3.5 to 6.3 comes handy. It's compact lens, it's sharp lens. It's so compact that you put that with the kit lens of Z30, the camera becomes so small when it comes to form factor that you could put even in your, in jeans, and you can travel anywhere. So that becomes handy. But I can't use for portraiture. I can't use for landscapes. As wide as 16mm goes, I am fine. But what if I need 10mm, which is equivalent to 15mm full frame? I don't have any, of these choices when it comes to Z30. That's where I need third-party lenses like Tamron 10 to 24 f4. And in order to use that crop sensor lens over Z30, I have to use FTC adapter. So that means extra stuff. So things are there, but not natively. So I hope you like this video, and in this video I just tried to make you this idea, try to give you this idea that it totally depends on you what exactly you need to shoot. On the end of the day, based on what type of shoot that you do, then you should go for full frame or crop sensor. Crop sensor have their own advantages, full frame having their several advantages. You need crop sensor in many places, sports, action, wildlife, for better croppability, for better video performance. But if you need subject separation, ultra wide lenses, low light performance, you have to go with full frame, but with lower number of megapixels like 24 megapixel or 12 megapixel. Only then you will get the low light performance. Or if you are shooting, if you want to go any higher megapixel camera on full frame, like 45 megapixel, 61 megapixel, 50 megapixel full frame camera, their performance is exactly the same like crop sensor, because the number of pixels per unit area is exactly the same. So when it comes to shooting low light and you think that 20 megapixel is not good enough and you want to go with 50 megapixel, you are making a big mistake. They are exactly the same. The pixel pitch is the same, like D850 or Z7 or Z7 II having the same pixel pitch just like Z30, Z50, ZFC or D7500 or D500. They all have the same pixel pitch, so they perform exactly the same. Except D500, because that camera is totally exceptional. It's made and built for sports action, hardcore, pro photography, outdoor. Yes, it has 20.9 megapixel, which is exactly into the D7500, which is exactly into the Z50, which is exactly into the ZFC, which is exactly into the Z30, which I'm shooting right now. These 5 cameras are having the same sensor, but besides the sensor, how the camera builds around with the other features, number of frames per second, the buffer, the SNR firmware, the number of card slots, the batteries, the support of battery grip, the autofocus module, how good it is, and all that. That makes the D500 much more superior camera than Z50 or ZFC or Z30 or D7500, because when it comes to shooting sports action wildlife, none of these cameras good enough in compared to D500. But if I want to go for shooting video, then D500 is crap. It's not even close of Z30 which I'm shooting right now, or Z50 or ZFC. It's not even close. So see, I am giving you examples, practical examples, where what type of camera you need to choose for what type of photography. Sony is making some really cool cameras for vlogging. Their Z lineup, very good, but they don't have lenses. They are making only kit lenses. Again, it boils down what exactly type of shoot that you do. For vlogging, crop sensor is all the way. Even their FX series, they just reviewed FX30, is crop sensor. Very good for cinematic, very good functionality, too many functions, great support when it comes to lenses, but it's crop sensor and it's built for video. So again, it boils down what exactly you plan to shoot. So that's it. I'm going to wrap up this video now. I hope you got what I'm trying to say in this video, and you choose wisely. In the end of the day, what type of cameras you have to go with. When it comes to wide and ultra wide shooting experience, these days you don't need even a DSLR or mirrorless, even a phone. That iPhone, this iPhone can take freaking awesome images, landscape images, in a 28mm angle of view and 13mm of angle of view. And they are giving you raw options. With the better light, better handhold capability, you can take some freaking amazing images, ultra wide and wide angle lenses. You can take that. You don't need DSLRs now. You don't need mirrorless now. You don't need those big ultra wide angle lenses now, which are so big and bulgy from the front. These cameras, these smartphones, they are covering you in that part. Even their low light performance after the sunset is becoming extremely good because of the computational photography. Even they are stepping up in order to provide a better subject separation because of computational photography. You go switch into the portrait mode in the iPhone or any smartphone, you can take a good blurry background shot of any person you are going to take portrait of. So these smartphones covered most of your basic needs. So yeah, in some cases you can go with simple smartphone and get away. I am enjoying iPhone 14 Pro camera lately because it's giving me raw files, giving me so much 48 megapixel detail that I can crop in. I made a video about it which I uploaded like 3-4 days ago, and where I really put the iPhone 48 megapixel against not one, not two, in fact 3 cameras, and you can see the result. The iPhone is stacking up really almost equal in compared to those full frame, high resolution or the crop sensor cameras. Please go and watch that video and you will understand what I'm trying to say. That's it. I'm going to wrap up. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you like this video and you understand what I'm trying to say. I'll see you in future with some new content. Till then, take care.